Breaking news overseas. An American man is the third person to die after a mass drink poisoning in Laos, as two best friends from Melbourne remain on life support in Thailand. Live now to Nine's Gillian Lantouris in Bangkok. Jill, what more do we know?
Well, Jane, US authorities confirmed the death last night. That man was staying in Bang Vieng, the same place where Holly Bowles and Bianca Jones was staying when they fell ill. The man became unwell with suspected methanol poisoning last week and has since died. So this seems to be quite a widespread issue. We know two Danish young women have also died, and a New Zealander is also in hospital with the same symptoms. Sadly, Bianca and Holly, they are both still clinging to life. But police have started an investigation over in Laos. They did go there to the backpackers and to the bar yesterday morning. They confiscated some of the alcohol there, which they will be taking back to test and see what has gone so horribly wrong. But of course, we're all thinking of Holly Bowles and Bianca Jones. Holly's father spoke to us for the first time yesterday here in Bangkok.
Right now our daughter remains in intensive care unit in critical condition. She's on life support. We'd just like to thank everyone from back home for all the support and love.
Bianca Jones is about an 8-hour drive north of where we are here in Bangkok. Her family say they want answers from authorities. They don't want anyone else to go through the anguish that they're going through right now, and we're all thinking of them.
We sure are, Jill. Thank you.
News. A third person has now died after a mass drink poisoning at a youth hostel in Laos, while Melbourne victims Holly Bowles and Bianca Jones remain on life support in Thailand. For an update on the situation, a friend of both families, Nick Heath, joins us live now from Melbourne. Nick, thank you so much for your time this morning. I know you've been fronting up for days now. It's such a harrowing time for the families.
An incredibly difficult time, Sarah, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
Obviously, the news of the third person dying is further shattering news in the context of things. There's been really no update with the girls overnight. They're still on life support over there in a very precarious situation. And the whole nightmare just seems to be getting worse.
Oh, I know. I mean, for their parents at the moment, it's literally just one step in front of the other for them, sitting there maintaining vigil, hoping for the best outcome here. We know just how loved the girls are. They're members of your local footy club, the community. I mean, everyone there must be feeling it right now.
Yes, at least they know that they've got our support and love back here in Australia, even though we're feeling reasonably helpless about it.
Yeah.
We're just offering as much support as we possibly can at this difficult time, trying to protect the families, as obviously they're dealing with the direct situation over there with their bedside vigils at the moment. Yeah, that's all we can really do at this point.
How are the girls from the Beaumaris Football Club dealing with this? I mean, it must be so difficult, but they must also have so many questions, and you too, about how this happened, why this happened, the injustice of it all.
Yeah, naturally their teammates are distraught over here. The great thing about a football club is we can deal with this collectively as well as individually. We've arranged all sorts of counselling services through our local club chaplain and local club psychologist. The local football league, the BAFA, Victorian Amateur Football League, have got a help network. We've had a great response actually from our local members of parliament, Zoe Daniels and I'm just trying to remember the other one, but Brad Roswell. Both of them have been in touch. They've offered all of their help, and it's just amazing the response to the community. And quite frankly, if we can take any small positives out of this, has been the response of so many people so far who are all wanting to get in there and help in whatever way they can.
Yeah, absolutely, Nick. I mean, it's just terrifying to think this can so easily happen. Backpackers, we've all been there. We've all been travelling through these parts of the world. You never want or expect anything like this to happen. Let's just hope that things are okay and that we do get some answers soon. Nick, thoughts with you guys all. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Good on you.
Human rights lawyers have told the BBC that Turkey is likely in breach of international humanitarian law A BBC investigation has found that Turkish attacks on infrastructure in northeast Syria have contributed to a water crisis in an already drought-stricken country. Namak Koshnau reports.
The river Khabur was once the main source of water for Hasaka in northeast Syria. 30 years later, extreme drought caused by climate change has dried up the supply.
I can't see a sign of water anywhere. It's a land of 1 million people without water. We are dying here.
When the Khabur River dried up, the people of Hasaka turned to Aluk, where water dug from wells could be piped into the city. The Aluk wells are in an area called Ras Al Ain. In 2019, it was seized by the Turkish army as part of a military incursion in its fight against the PKK, which Turkey considers a terrorist organization. Today there is no water piped in from Aluk to Hasaka. Instead, the city depends on unreliable sources of water brought by tankers driven by people like Ahmed.
These people need more water. The weather is very hot. The phone doesn't stop ringing. People calling. You can see, we can't cope with people's demands.
The only short-term solution to Hasaka's water problem was to guarantee water from Aluk wells again. But in October 2023, Turkey bombed the region's main power station, Suwaidia. Mustafa Ahmed was in charge of the power plant.
The whole operating system of Suwaidia power station, nothing left. The region was in a crisis, without electricity, water, bread or health services.
Electricity from here supplied 900,000 people, and it also once drove the Aluk water station. That's now impossible, and almost 1 million people in Hasaka remain without a direct water supply.
People with dollars in their pocket, they buy water. No one else has access to water. It's unfair for the poor to die of thirst.
Turkey has said its attacks are targeting PKK terrorist facilities. But BBCI has verified that multiple strikes hit 4 key electricity facilities in the region. They powered the grid that supplies electricity to large areas of northeast Syria. This included the largest power station, Suwaidia. An independent UN report found no PKK bases near the station. We put our findings to international human rights lawyers. They told us that Turkey's attacks on water and electricity infrastructure in northeast Syria could constitute a severe violation of international law. The Turkish government told the BBC that it has a right of self-defense against the PKK, that it observes international humanitarian law, and that civilian safety is its priority. Namak Koshnau, BBC News.
Biden administration is also issuing a warning to Turkey following reports that it's hosting Hamas leadership. As Alex Hogan reports, it comes as fighting ramps up in southern Lebanon, with Israel launching more airstrikes.
As the fighting grinds on in Gaza, the Biden administration is warning Turkey against hosting Hamas leadership, saying American allies should not be harboring members of a terrorist organization. It comes after several senior officials reportedly left Qatar for Turkey last week after Doha suspended its efforts to mediate a Gaza ceasefire. Turkey has not denied Hamas leaders are in the country, but officials say they have no plans to open an office for them.
A number of these individuals are under U.S. indictment, have been under U.S. indictment for some time, and we believe that they should be turned over to the United States.
Meanwhile, the White House is ramping up diplomatic efforts in Lebanon, sending Special Envoy Amos Hochstein to Beirut on Tuesday for ceasefire talks, and he suggested the fighting could come to an end soon.
I'm here in Beirut to facilitate that decision, but it's ultimately the decision of the parties to reach a conclusion to this conflict. It is now within our grasp.
As talks continue, Israel is stepping up its airstrikes on Hezbollah targets in southern Lebanon. Monday night, an explosion rocked central Beirut, killing at least 5 people and injuring several more. The IDF says multiple people in Tel Aviv were also injured after a missile launched from inside Lebanon was intercepted. As part of a U.S.-backed ceasefire proposal, the Lebanese army would deploy along the border to act as a buffer between Israel and Hezbollah. In London, Alex.
While Russia is suspected of severing 2 communication cable lines between NATO allies in the Baltic Sea, a Chinese vessel has also been implicated in the incident, as Danish authorities detained it on Wednesday. The cuts happened earlier this week to the Sea Lion 3 cable, connecting Finland and Germany, and a 130-mile line connecting Sweden and Lithuania. Investigators are probing the movements of a Chinese bulk carrier that traveled to Egypt from a Russian port. According to data tracking, the ship passed close to both telecommunication cables around the time each was severed Sunday and Monday. The Danish Navy shadowed the vessel, eventually detaining it. They suspect the ship damaged the cables but provided no further comment. Social media reports have claimed the ship had a Russian captain, but the assertions have yet to be independently verified. A separate Chinese registered ship reportedly cut the Baltic Connector pipeline last year and a telecommunications cable connecting Finland and Estonia with its anchor. Officials familiar with the investigation say Russian sailors were aboard that vessel at the time of the event. German officials stopped short of blaming a particular country Tuesday, but said latest line cuttings appear to be no accident. Lithuanian officials noted that they were deeply concerned about the incident. Other Western officials previously said there were indications Moscow was behind the cuts, though no specific details were released. The Kremlin denied Russia's involvement on Wednesday, calling the accusations quite absurd. For more on this story, download the Straight Arrow News app or visit us online at san.com.
Italy, Spain and Greece have now joined the United States in closing their embassies in Kyiv, Ukraine, over fears of a significant Russian attack. The French and the British embassies do remain open, but they have urged their nationals to exercise particular caution today. The news comes hours after the Biden administration is reported to have approved the use of landmines by the Ukrainian army in a bid to slow the Russian advance. It is one of several steps that President Biden has taken recently to up military support for Ukraine before Donald Trump returns to the White House next year. Well, let's speak to Gulliver Cragg, our correspondent, about all of this. He's live for us in the heart of Kyiv now. And Gulliver, first of all, on the embassy's closure, this is unusual, isn't it? How significant do you think it is?
Well, the Americans did say it was due to an abundance of caution and stressed that they weren't having any indication that there would be a nuclear attack on Kiev, but they did say that they had intelligence suggesting that there may be a major attack today. Those other embassies following suit has, of course, led to a lot of speculation and a bit of nervousness in the capital today, especially perhaps because the day started with a bang, as it were, when a drone was shot down near the centre of Kiev, or maybe it was on the other side of the river, but it was certainly pretty loud. This happens all the time, but it normally happens at night. It happened when more people were awake, and amid the general, context, that led people to feel a bit more nervous about it. There is also a fake news being spread about, according to Ukrainian military intelligence, with messages being put out on various Telegram channels claiming to be from them, warning of a massive missile and bomb attack coming to the Ukrainian capital today. The military intelligence then put out a statement saying this is not us, and they suspect, of course, it's the Russians with some kind of psychological operation, perhaps trying to take advantage of the messages already sent out by those Western embassies. One siren went off today so far during the day in Kiev. It turned out shortly afterwards to have been a false alarm. They said there was a ballistic missile threat, but no ballistic missile flew in. I happened to be in a supermarket at the time when the siren rang out. I think I saw a few more people than usual looking nervously at their phones to see what was flying in, but most people just carried on with their shopping, and the cashiers did not rush for the shelters. They stayed open.
And Gulliver, look, let's talk a bit about what the Americans are doing at the moment, because it was just a few days ago that you and I were talking about the Biden administration green-lighting the use of American-made weapons to be fired deep into Russian territory. We're now hearing Washington has okayed the Ukrainian army to use landmines as well, American landmines against Russia. What's your sense as to the kind of impact that actually could have on the battlefield?
My impression, though I'm no military expert, is that it will have quite a significant impact on the battlefield, because what's happening on the battlefield is that the Russians in Donbass are sending infantry to take over Ukrainian army positions, trenches, and the Ukrainians, although they are inflicting significant casualties on the Russians, are continually being forced to retreat because they are severely inferior in terms of numbers and ammunition. If they can deploy these landmines, which can be deployed remotely, they can be fired onto the territory and dropped there, then I think that will help them a lot in stopping these Russian advances. The problem, of course, is that they're illegal. Ukraine is a signatory to the Ottawa Convention, which bans anti-personnel mines. The United States is not. There's an exception, though, I was told by a Ukrainian military expert this morning, in that if the mines are detonated not automatically but remotely, as in the Ukrainian soldier sitting in a house watching on the screen the drone footage showing the Russians are preparing an attack, then presses a button to detonate the mines at the moment when they cross, because they are watching all of this from their drone footage from the sky all the time, then that would not be illegal. What's illegal if they're set to automatic mode and they explode if you step on them? It might well be that the Ukrainians will actually put them on automatic mode, but who's going to check? I mean, I think that they feel that this is a desperate situation and that there would be widespread understanding from certainly Ukrainian public opinion, if not global public opinion, if they break their engagements to not use these things, because they really need to save the lives of their soldiers. I think that's the highest priority in the minds of most Ukrainians at the moment.
And look, I want to talk to you about Donald Trump's incoming return to power in the United States, because there has been much speculation that Biden is making these moves now ahead of Trump returning to the White House. Before we do, though, let's take a listen to what Zelensky has had to say recently on American media about Trump's return.
If they will cut, I think we will lose. Of course, anyway, we will stay, we will fight. We have our production, but it's not enough to prevail. And I think it's not enough to survive. But that will be, if such choice will be American choice, so we will decide what we will have to do.
And look, Gulliver, Zelensky there pretty clear. He says Ukraine will lose the war if the United States cuts military funding. Is that the expectation now in Ukraine, that Trump will indeed slash military aid? And where might that leave efforts then to try and, sign a deal with Russia? Is that more likely than it was a couple of months ago?
Well, really in Ukraine, there is both fear that Trump may cut military aid and hope that he may in fact increase it. And one of the reasons that they think he might be persuaded to increase it is if he is persuaded that Ukraine risks not surviving, as Zelensky put it in that interview with Fox News, if US military aid is cut, and that could be something that the Trump administration would actually see as quite undesirable, a humiliation for the United States, Russia in control of Ukraine and its resources. And so Ukrainians, I think, are going all out to try to persuade the Trump administration to not cut military aid and financial aid to Ukraine. And this interview with Fox News on the part of Zelensky is probably a part of that. I think that this interview was aimed at American public opinion. Towards Ukrainian public opinion, you hear him inserting certain nuances into his declarations, which I do think is a kind of preparation for talks and perhaps some kind of settlement that would freeze the conflict, which Ukrainians would regard as very unsatisfactory. They'd be afraid that it would flare up again soon. But you hear Zelensky talking about diplomatic solutions. You also heard him yesterday in his speech to Parliament. I picked up on the fact that he said, we will never give up on our right to our territory. Before that, he was saying, we will never give up on our territory. That may be an indication that Ukraine is going to, at some point, say, look, we're not currently in control of the territory that's occupied by Russia. We consider this illegally occupied. We'll never recognize Russian sovereignty over it. But that if some kind of peace deal with security guarantees is available to us, then that might be the price that they have to pay. But it's step by step, because Ukrainian public opinion is really not prepared for that at the moment, I think.
임무에 대하여라는 강령적 연설을 하셨습니다. 조국과 사회주의라는 크나큰 세계에 살며 남 모두는 헌신의 길을 걷고 있는 대대장 지도와 혁명의 요구, 현종대의 요구로부터 전쟁 준비 완성. 김정은 동지께서는 말하고 결의하는 당과 혁명이 부여한 숭고한 사명과 본분을 깊이 자각하고 열렬히 호소하셨습니다. 시대의 강군 건설의 요구에 맞게 전주시는 유경 용장을 족적들이 우러들며 요리하고 받들어가는 우리 혁명 무력의 영광 넘친 발전 행동.
sábado 16 de noviembre del 2024, totalmente incomunicado en lo que es el sector Jucutuma. La plancha ya no existe, ya se fue la plancha, no hay paso por esta zona.
Deaths in the Philippines in the aftermath of Super Typhoon Manyi. Local authorities say the storm, locally known as Pepito, killed 7 people in a landslide in Nueva Vizcaya. The northern Luzon province was along the storm's path over the weekend. In Camarines Norte, officials clarified reports of a typhoon-related fatality, which turned out to be a case of a vehicle crash. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. earlier today said he was saddened over the person's death. Over 16,000 people fled their homes in the province due to the storm.
Turning to the new report now from the Pentagon about unidentified flying objects. There were hundreds of new reported sightings over the last year, and some the government still can't explain. Chief Global Affairs correspondent Martha Raddatz joins us with the details. It's quite the talker. Martha, good morning.
Good morning, Whit. It does. It all sounds straight out of a science fiction movie, but these unidentified airborne objects are taken very seriously by the Pentagon and the intelligence community. And this morning, their new report revealing that these sightings are on the rise.
Navy pilots have seen them.
My gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west.
More than 1,600 unidentified flying objects have been reviewed by the government's Anomaly Resolution Office, or ARROW, over the years. 98% of them eventually found to be debris, drones, or even large birds. But new numbers this morning from May of 2023 to June of 2024 show 757 new sightings, with 21 of them that cannot be explained.
What? It looks so weird for me.
Like up 2 lights or something like that.
It's weird.
It's wrong in there.